You know, as Dave said, this conversation started 2 years ago, this very week, right here with this very group. I talked to you before I talked to anybody about my book, Dear White Friend, and the response was amazing. It felt like we launched this new way to talk about race together as friends, as colleagues, and as Dave said, we've had a lot of conversations along the way. I'll be honest that now we'd be remiss if we didn't recognize that we're in a period of time in our country where there's been a response to that conversation. Some folks who think maybe progress is not what we want. We like things status quo. A lot of legislation that's going on that quite honestly I don't understand. I don't understand that people don't want to study our history completely and the implications of it. I don't understand changing curriculums and banning books. And today the Supreme Court has banned any ideas of affirmative action in colleges. And I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't be sitting here without affirmative action. But although I don't understand, just like before, I've asked for your empathy. I'm going to give my empathy. I'm going to lean in to try to learn why are people feeling this way and what is the perspective that leads a person to believe that these are good ideas. So, but I did ask 2 years ago that you take intentional action in your sphere of influence and your sphere of control. So that brings us to today, and many of you in this room are doing amazing things in your company to include all people, not just by race, but in other ways as well. And we want to talk to these two guys about what they've been doing in their businesses and in their communities, in their spheres of influence. I'm excited to have them with me. My job today is to give them as much room as possible. And we know we're between you and a break. And I'm going to ask that the two Johns remember that as well. I'll start off by just asking a general question. I'll start with you, John. It's eye contact. I looked at him. You know, a lot of people talk to me about taking action, but they're a little nervous. They're concerned. They're afraid. They don't want to get it wrong. What were you going through? How did you get over that? How did you get started in kind of deciding to take some action on this topic?
Well, like many others, after the George Floyd murder, I was approached as a leader by a number of people in our organization. We need to make a statement. We need to get out there. We need to make a statement about something. I said to my leaders, I said, if you all want to make a statement, I'll only say something if you're committed to doing something. And I looked them all in the eye and I said, I'm going to come back around about what I think we should do. I'll say something and then let's do something. And I recognized after that and saying something that I was way at the beginning of a journey, that I was super, super unaware of the underlying issues, and to know what to do was going to take really a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so I went really down a learning journey with, I'm part of another CEO group, gathered with a group of them, all white leaders. We're super curious about wanting to kind of advance our learning, and we started a little book club and consumed a whole bunch of information over the course of about 6 or 7 weeks, and had a meeting every Thursday night for a couple hours on Zoom, and really kind of moved towards really understanding, and then from understanding to action.
Yeah, you're a pretty intense person, pretty intentional when you decide to do something, and that intensity of learning was pretty dramatic. So we'll ask the other John, Garrett. Your approach to things are different, but it's, again, most people look at these situations, they want to do something, but they end up doing nothing. What made it different?
I wanted to do nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm from Texas, and so, we have actually a very, I think, underrated in some ways of inclusivity in my upbringing. I know I'm probably here for about 20% of this audience because I'm like a lot slower on my journey than John is. But to be honest with you, I was like, I'm not racist. Like, I didn't understand. I got my staff together and everyone's really upset. I'm like, okay, we can't go out on record and say anything. Of course what happened was wrong, but like, I mean, I grew up with Hispanics. I'm that guy. Like, I'm the white John, right? That didn't understand what the problem was. I never felt like I felt defensive. White fragility. Like, come on. Like, I'm Texan, right? I don't need to worry about this fragility. Like that's where I was coming from. I think that my journey began when I realized that it's not about me. That's when my journey began. And, I called my one black neighbor, and
It wasn't me, by the way. It was not me.
and had some conversations. I learned that it wasn't about me, and I learned what was happening in a new way, and had some real transformative moments for me. And so that's how I started.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about a little bit what you've been doing. We'll go back to Gavan, John Gavan, and tell us a little bit about what you've been up to over the last few years.
Okay. I'm going to share just a couple quick things.
One more.
One more. There we go. I ran into this framework as I was doing my studies on this, and I think it's really helpful to go through this to understand that we all kind of need to know and own where we are on a journey towards understanding diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether it be in the world of gender equity, racial equity, LGBTQ. Where are we? Are we unaware of really what's going on and what the underlying issues are? If you're unaware and you run into somebody who's an advocate, this is where the conversations get really, really awkward and uncomfortable. Somebody doesn't understand why someone else is an advocate when they're unaware. So kind of owning your place and moving up this ladder from being unaware to aware to active, and hopefully getting to a point where you're an advocate and you're actually doing something, not just active, but doing something that's making a difference. And so I went on that journey, and as I became aware, what I chose to do was I wanted to do something other than write a check. And as I was becoming aware of the challenges of professionals of color in the architecture, engineering, and construction business, I thought about what my gift has been as a leader in my 35 years, and it's people development, it's leadership development, it's mentoring, it's coaching people. I created our leadership development program for our company. And so I got the idea to adapt that leadership development program and partner with others in my industry to create an industry-wide leadership development program for professionals of color. We piloted it in 2021. It was an amazing, amazing experience. And as Oscar said before, decided to dream big and take a really, really big leap. And so we founded a nonprofit called LeaderFlow in 2022. And we're now in 3 cities. We have 45 people in the program. We have 20 sponsors, and we're doing this really, really incredible in-person leadership development program for professionals of color in AEC.
So, and the goal of the program is to move them through layers of levels of leadership?
Well, the basic idea is I think a lot of people are trying to solve diversity, equity, and inclusion by attracting more black talent to the pipeline. So if we just recruited HBCUs, it's all going to be fine in the end. Right. Well, there's a recognition that there are really talented people in the industry already, and they're in that pipeline, right? That pipeline we're trying to attract people to, but they're in a pipeline that wasn't really built for them, and it's a real struggle to make it through to leadership. And so what we want to do with this group is build a connection of support around them, of mentoring, of coaching, and of skills, so that they can earn promotions to leadership. And it's when we get to a place where more and more professionals of color have earned a place at the table of leadership that the industry looks attractive, and that pipeline is really going to start to flow. So the vision for this is 5 to 10 year professionals already in the talent pipeline. How can we connect them together, teach them, mentor them, coach them, sponsor them, and help them get to leadership?
Yeah, I'm glad you said the word sponsor, because I think at the end of the day, sometimes you need to help them along with your sponsorship. John, if we Googled your company and we put in the word diversity or equity and inclusion, you'd be an award-winning company in this area. And quite honestly, it surprised me a little bit. But I shouldn't have been surprised because you're an amazing guy. But tell us why they're recognizing you in
No,
Texas and
everybody
other
in this
places.
room should be surprised, especially if you know me. You know, I think what's important. I think what's important is the aware piece for me. There's kind of two transformative moments before I got to active, and it changed me and it changed my company. First of all, you got to understand, to be on a panel like this, it looks good, right? You think, oh, look. Well, the same thing in the news business, right? Like everyone's checking the box. We got X amount of black reporters. We got X amount of, right? Everyone's doing that. And I know y'all understand what I'm talking about. It's very intense, in particular in the news business. So it's about how the company looks, right? And again, what I learned, it's not about me. It's not about my company. It's about love, like Dave talked about at the beginning. So my journey was, my awareness journey with my one black neighbor. He told me that he comes to the holiday Christmas party, neighborhood Christmas party. And you know what black, not everyone, but what he told me that black people do when they walk in a room? They literally count how many other black people are in that room.
You got to stop telling our secrets, man.
And I was like, what? Like what? Like that doesn't make sense to me, because when you know, as a white person, I look at the room, I'm like, oh man, this is cool. There's some diversity in here. We're doing a good job, right? The perspective is like so different for me. So learning that it's about love in that, how do I make a black person feel more comfortable? And by the way, on the journey, you're going to learn like the different Asians feel differently about some of this stuff. And like, but if I love people, if I love my black friends, how do I make them feel more comfortable? And so the second big part for me was I was at church, and our pastor was doing a study on the book of Revelation. There's a scene at the end where Jesus is worshiped, and there's a verse that says, every tongue, nation, and tribe. And our pastor stopped. We'll worship Jesus, right? Our pastor stopped and said, why is it that Sunday is the most segregated day in America? You got black church, you got white church. If perfect worship is diverse, every tongue, nation, and tribe, then why shouldn't our church look like this, right? And it clicked on me because as a Christian, I believe that work is worship. Like what I do at work honors God. And I said, well, wait a minute. If perfect worship is diverse, then perfect work should be diverse. And I was like, it clicked. I was like, it's not about the check boxes of how many people go through your HR system. It's about if you have diversity in the office, it could be perfect office. And so that's when I started. I felt different motivation. It's not about me. It's not about my company. It's about loving others. It's about honoring God with my work. So that's kind of when I started really getting active.
Yeah, you know, the title of this thing is Closing the Gap Between Us, and so that there's a presupposition that there's this gap between us, and I don't think there's a whole lot of argument about that. There's a lot of gap in outcomes and relationships and the like, but let's just double click on this a little bit. Some people believe that we're all equal, and if we just keep doing what we're doing, it'll all fall into place. What would you say to that, John? And by the way, I know this question was not one I gave to you ahead of time, but I know you're ready to answer it.
So, you know, we were at the bar last night, and we had this conversation a little bit, and we were talking about, you know, there's a slide that a lot of people use about the difference between equity and equality, right? And if you've seen this slide, there's a fence, there's a short person at the fence, a tall person at the fence, and the short person can't see over the fence, right? And so I think the analogy there is, you know, is it okay to give the short person a box so they can watch the game, right? And equity is that. Really changing the conversation is, can we get rid of the fence, right? But I think that the idea that understanding that there's a group of people that doesn't have the privilege and the advantages that others do, it's very real, right? So for me, I started my career as an intern, buddied up with a guy teaching a class, white guy into sports. Was easy to make that connection with him. He saw, you know, a little bit of himself in me, mentored me, coached me, gave me opportunities. Then meeting other white clients was, you know, easy to get into business development, making connections with partners. I'm in this world where I'm in the world of familiar. I'm in the world where people understand me and know me. And you walk into our office and you're black, all those connections, all those advantages go away, and it's all really awkward, it's all really difficult. And so you're starting from a really, really different place relative to connections, relationships, sometimes skill sets because of education and background, family heritage, all those things. So if we're starting from a different place, we need to do different things in order to get people to the same place in the end.
Yeah, that's good insight. What would you say to the same thing? This is the idea of intentionality. You did some things internally to your company. What were they, and why weren't they just happening naturally?
I did this test on, it was like how diverse, how advanced you are diverse before all the George, even before the George. And I scored like, there's a 0 to 100 on verbal and nonverbal in racial relationships. And I scored a 7, okay, out of 100. I was like, what? Like, I'm a good communicator or whatever. So if I say anything, just know, I think I might be a 12 or 15 at this point. But can I say this?
I don't know if you can say it until after you say it.
I know. As business leaders, I think if any group, right, can win, it's us, right? Because we care about people. And so if I go back to this, like caring about individuals, I think we have to be careful about how we approach the black population. It needs to be approached differently than a lot of the other races. And I don't know if that's politically correct. I don't care based on my journey and what I'm learning. And the reason I think that we need to do that as leaders and have an understanding of that is because the black journey is different than every other journey. And if we really love people, then we need to like be understanding like where they're coming from. Because one of my Asian neighbors was like, why do you? He didn't understand why black people count black people when they walk in a room. He's successful. He's like, he's an immigrant. I became successful. Just having an understanding that hey, the black experience is different. I think is a good step. I think if that's right. I mean, you're black, so you can tell me. But that's what I've learned, and I want to say that. So what I did once I started learning this stuff is I had an executive position open. And I went through the process, and I was like, man, I'm gonna do the best to hire a diverse candidate. We have all white people on our executive team at the time, a lot of women, majority women. But as we went through the process, we had to John's point, we had 2 candidates that were qualified. This is what makes people feel uncomfortable, and one was a white woman, and the other one was a black male. They're both qualified. Because of what I learned, I was like, I got to hire the black man because I wanted other black people to see black people so they felt comfortable at Community Impact because I want a diverse workforce because I believe that's a better workforce. And so, at the end of the day, you as a leader, if you want to have black people in your organization, you have to hire black people. And what happens is, and what's happened is we have black reporters in some of the most conservative counties in Austin. We have, it's just a beautiful sight now. We're not counting how many people come through the process anymore. It just has happened. We are a diverse organization because we took the step of understanding that, in particular, the black workforce views things differently and having love for that and doing something about it.
Wow. I lost track of where we were because I was
Did I
really
miss
listening to you.
anything?
You said a bunch of stuff that was inappropriate, but it's okay. We'll correct it later.
Editing.
Nothing we can't edit out. Nothing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Somebody asked, why am I on this panel? I guess I know now that Dave wanted a reason to get rid of me in the organization.
That and you haven't paid your dues. Those are the 2 things that are a problem. John, what have been your experiences with the program? John, Gavin, what have been your experiences with LeaderFlow? Any outcome? It's only been a couple of years. I know it's grown quickly. I met the young lady that's running it, and she is a rock star. Really enjoyed talking with her. What's been your experience?
Well, so Janice co-founded LeaderFlow with me. She was in our first pilot program. She was looking for a career pivot. She's an architect by training with an interest in really making an impact in the world. And so she made a hard pivot to be an executive director of LeaderFlow. So impact. I'm gonna start personally.
Yeah.
I have grown more in the last 3 years than I think I have in my entire life through this incredible set of relationships that I've built, friendships that I've built, and I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm comfortable having an uncomfortable conversation. The first time I gathered one of this group of people, we held the first meeting in space that I have in my backyard, and I was like, are these people going to accept me? Right? Yeah. I'm the white guy, and I'm the only white guy. So I'm counting. Yeah. One, right, in the mirror, and I've now spoken at National Organization for Minority Architects conference, where I was the whole audience is black. I'm the only person. I'm looking like I've got a really big spotlight. So I've learned a lot about building connections with people that are different than me, and being super vulnerable in order to do that. And so I feel very differently equipped as a leader. So that's an impact. I also feel like what's happening with our industry is this is a unifying thing. So shout out to McCarthy, who's a Tugboat member. They're a sponsor, but 20 firms already, probably 50 firms by the end of the year, will be contributing to building this program nationally. And I think when you work in a unifying way, it makes an entire industry, it elevates an entire industry, like the construction industry really did with safety a number of years ago. This is kind of that next thing for an industry to really up their game, to find, to really be an attractive industry for diverse people. And then the personal impacts are, it's astounding to see what's happening with the graduates of this program. They're connected, they're confident, they're showing up differently. They call and say, I'm going to have a really, really difficult conversation with somebody about my experience. Can I get a little coaching on that? That goes well. They're getting promoted. They're getting speaking opportunities. They're showing that you can thrive in our industry. And my dream for 10 years from now is there's like 3,000 graduates of this, and 500 of them are leading companies, right? And I think it's going to happen.
Good job.
Yeah,
Pretty excited.
That's outstanding. And another shout out to McCarthy. If you guys want to find a company that's really far down the road on having an infrastructure in place for driving for diversity of all types, I would say they really do have their SHIT together on that for sure. Mm-hmm. So your personal experiences with this, you talked a little bit about how it's impacted the business. Yeah. Other things you would share about the experience?
Yeah, I mean, I hate Glassdoor. I don't know if y'all like Glassdoor, and I hate it. Journalists really like to speak their minds, but one of the things they have is the trends of diversity going up significantly up on community impact. If we want to be a work place of the future, and a workforce of the future, regardless of what you personally believe, like if you take all the politics out, you take your own personal faith out, you do all that stuff. If you want to have a workforce of the future, you got to be a diverse organization. So it's good for your business. So I'm grateful for that. We partner with the University of Texas at Austin. Hook 'em. I know we got a lot of Aggies in the room. But they, with their journalism department, and we pay for their students to write additional stories to make sure we have our content is more representative, and that's a great future employee pipeline, and obviously doing important work. And I think the thing that's the most shocking is the Black Business Journal in Austin recognized me as an advocate. So if you go along that is so shocking to me. And it's humbling, especially as you get to know me, you understand why it's so humbling. And but what does it mean? It means that even though I'm not as far along as John is on his journey, and what it means is that I have learned something. I have something to share. Now I might share some stupid stuff, but I have learned, and so that means that I have a responsibility to help those that are kind of just below me to say, hey, like it's okay. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat or whatever. Like, take the politics off. Do you love people? If you love people, then show some empathy and be curious. And that'll preach. Let's pass around the offering plate. Let's do it. I mean seriously, because I know everybody in this room. I know everyone in this room loves people. If anyone should be the leader, and I know y'all are. But if you're kind of on the fence of like, is this a political thing? Is this the left progressive movement trying to move me? Like, please put that on the side and say, if I love people, then okay, just take the curious step. Meet with your one black neighbor and ask questions and try to love your neighbor.
So I'm gonna say I disagree with one thing.
Oh, God.
All right. I don't. The path isn't to meet with your one black neighbor. Okay. The path is to do the work. I think it's really important to do the work. We put this together.
He just wanted to show that slide. Go ahead.
I wanted to bridge to this slide. I feel like to put it on, the one black person or the few black people in your company, to tell you what has happened for the last hundreds of years in our country and why you should care. That's a huge burden, and that's not what we should be doing. We should be doing the work. There's a bunch of books here, some films, podcasts, some really, really good stuff. Everything that you see there, I've consumed all of that, and I think that's how to begin your learning journey. Be curious, and
See, I disagree with you, but we didn't talk about this. I disagree.
Well, I wish we would have now.
I want to give the other perspective on it, if that's okay. Because I think this is where we get a lot of things wrong in moving societal issues forward. Abortion, any kind of hot topics, whether or not you should be vaccinated, race relations. Where we get it wrong is we don't have empathy for the person that doesn't even understand one thing about it, or maybe has strong opinions. Like we feel like sometimes everyone needs to be as enlightened as another group, and so you're probably, I'm just making this up, I don't know. You're probably more politically left than I am, right?
Wow.
And so you do the, I don't know, I don't have no idea, but like from our conversations, I would guess that. So this is exciting to you. When I see the book White Fragility, I'm like, I can't get my hand. I need to talk to a friend that I trust.
So let's settle it this way.
Yeah.
Let's just simply say that everyone's got to find their way, and that's why there were two
Right.
of you here.
That's
instead of
right.
one. And I don't know that there's
That's
a
right.
right way. I think there's
I agree.
this idea that we're on a journey someplace, and the love comment
Yes.
to me
Yeah.
is central. We've already segued into what you would tell folks to do. John would say there's a lot of stuff here that you can read and engage in, and I do agree that it is an opportunity for you. If you don't know, there's no reason why you don't know. If
There's
you actually
plenty
are
of
curious
content,
enough, there's
yeah.
a lot of content out
Yeah.
there. And you can start with my book because it was meant to be that on-road for you. And in your case, there's an action to be taken here.
Right.
There's a start with love and reaching out. And if you've got a black friend that will talk to you about this,
Right.
then maybe that's where you start. So I would say and both, maybe either or.
I would say and also, right? And to me, I feel like I can have a much better conversation having done a little bit of the work than I don't know.
That's
why
why
you feel uncomfortable.
That's
right?
why you're a better CEO than I am.
No,
And
I wouldn't say that.
I do a lot of assuming, and like I just did with you, and so I agree with that, and I appreciate what you said. That's why you're the moderator with this one. So, but we're just keeping it real, right?
But John, I have partners that are in the same place. That they're further on a spectrum of politics.
So I got that right? Are you a little bit more left leaning?
I'm moving left as I grow up for some reason. I don't know why that is, but I started very, very right, and I seem to be drifting towards the left as I grow
So
up.
we're headed toward the end.
Yeah.
I told you guys we'd end on time.
Yeah.
Anything you gotta say before I close? Like you won't be complete if you don't get a chance to say?
No.
Great, John. I'll take that as a no. I'll take that as a no. So three things I want to say to you. First, John and John will both be available at lunch. And I hope you engage with them and ask them about their opportunity. I think when there's a room with no people of color in it, I think the conversation can be different. And maybe you're not ready to be vulnerable in a diverse room. This will be a great chance to let white people talk about other stuff together. It'll be great. I've never been in that room before. The second thing I want to say is got to thank Dave for continuing to allow us to have this space to talk about this topic. I know it can be touchy and difficult, but the more we can cool down the rhetoric, not water it down, we can become friends and even decide, I just don't agree with you like these two just did, and it be okay, because we're all on a journey to someplace. And I think we're a purpose-driven company, and we're purpose-driven companies, and this should be a part of at least what we try to understand. The last thing I'll say is the resource guide's going to be out somewhere, somehow available to all of you, so you can get there's a bias assessment there. There are books out there and podcasts. I encourage you to just continue to walk down this path with us. So since they're not burning to say anything else, and since we have 11 seconds left, I just want to say thank you to all of you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.